just want you to know that the bike mayor is essentially lying in her podcast.
Hello, Winnipeg babes. This is the local election podcast created with the goal of teaching you everything you didn't want to have to know about local politics. I'm your host, Patty Weens.
And I'm your co-host, Sam Biko.
If you're feeling like you wish you could go back to the days where you just didn't care, rest assured this podcast is for you because we wish we could go back too. But alas, here we are.
It is so interesting and cool to be perceived, though, isn't it? I did not realize that it only took 2 episodes to hit a nerve with actual city councilors. So thank you so much, Councillor Edie, for tuning in, and anyone else on City Council who is just really burning to know what we have to say about your day job. So glad that we could provide that service for you.
It's so funny. We will be addressing that comment from Councillor Edie. Thank you very much. It looks like he didn't really listen to the show because we will call him out on what we actually said. But stay tuned. There will be more of that. We'll be dividing the show today into 2 parts. The first part is for everyone that wants to learn how politics works in Winnipeg. And the second part is a little update for those interested to know what happened at City Hall during the Public Works meeting we talked about last episode. In the first part, we will teach you about governance and what our model of governance is, which is the strong mayor model. Trust me, this is riveting. The second part of the show will have little nuggets for you. So if you make it through the first one, stay tuned for the second one. Here's one little nugget that you get to see in the second part of the show.
We can't pretend to hide behind the semantics that this is a tool. If we are granted this power, we will fold to the radical bike lobby and lower speed limits. Because of the undue influence, it seems, that a small number of radical cyclists have on our council.
So Councillor Russ Wyatt says it's time to stand up against bike extremists and bring back common sense to bike infrastructure spending. Cave into the noisy bike lobby interest group. Now we watch as some rich and entitled residents of River Heights scream and jump the queue. If the bike lobby wants to once again take lanes away from cars by building a bike lane on Wellington Crescent, then they can do so via a local area improvement levy. It appears the Winnipeg bike lobby only works for City Councillor Sherry Rowlands. It's time to give power back to the people and let them vote if they want to jump the queue and put it on their tax bill. I'm not scared of the bike lobby, Madam Chair. It wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered whether you had a bike lane there or not. It wouldn't matter what the speed limit is or not. That poor fellow unfortunately passed, and that's a terrible. And the fact that they're using around politically, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Just lovely. So you know what? Grab your tea, your glass of wine, your popcorn, your gummy bears, and let's talk politics. Sam, as I was doing research about how to explain Winnipeg's model of governance, i.e. how works at City Hall, I found the most interesting articles and videos in Councillor Luke's website.
Oh, really?
Kid you not. We're going to post a link to that here so that you don't have to go searching and so that we're not accused of lying or editing our little videos to benefit our agenda. So the key points about Winnipeg's governance model is, number 1, it hasn't been reviewed in years, probably almost 30 years by now, because the videos that we're going to show you right away explaining a little bit about it was made in 2021. I don't think that Councillor Lukes was in the executive policy committee at that point. She wasn't in the mayor's
His inner circle.
Yes, thank you. That's the word. Sorry. So a national consulting firm compared Winnipeg's model to 9 other Canadian cities. And here is how it works here. After each election, the mayor appoints 6 councillors to chair policy committees. And these chairs form the executive policy committee and a deputy mayor and the acting deputy mayor. So these appointed roles have a higher salary, committee budgets, and access to private report briefings. So they get to see all of these private reports before all the other councillors. And the 7 non-EPC councillors can't attend these private briefings and only see the reports when they become public. So they're really on the outside. Okay? So here is how reports are handled behind the scenes. Before a public report is released, there is a private agenda between the mayor's office and the public service. And then a second private briefing held with EPC, which is, those special counselors that are chairs of all these committees, and then the deputy mayor and the acting deputy mayor. Again, in this point, they can make changes. And only after this, the report becomes public for the non-EPC counselors and the public. Okay? So this is what we call the strong mayor model. So at this point, when they're in the decision-making process, the public committees start gathering feedback, but the final recommendations still have to flow back through the mayor and the EPC, and all major decisions require 9 votes to pass. So I am going to finish this explanation, and then that's as nerdy as we're going to get, with a little video that I actually clipped from Councillor Luke's website. Everything that I explained to you up until now was actually in a video that she put together. And this right here is the ending of that video, and it's super interesting. Pay attention.
The preliminary findings report identifies that no other city in Canada has a governance model like Winnipeg. Here are some highlights from the report. 7 out of 9 cities do not have a mayor appoint council committees. Instead, council members work collaboratively together to form the structure of their committees. No other city in Canada allows private meetings with select council members to make changes to public service reports before coming public. And no other city in Canada has an executive policy committee where committee decisions are funneled back through the mayor and the executive policy committee before a final council vote. None. Every councillor is democratically elected to represent the residents of their ward and participate in the city-making decision process. There is great value in having equal access to information and fair representation for residents. And there is great value in having equality in a structure to create collaboration versus division. I know we can improve the current governance model we operate under to allow better representation for the citizens of Winnipeg. My next video will focus on more structures in the governance model that impact the decision-making process. Thank you for your time on this very important issue.
Thank you,
She
Councillor
spent good
Luke.
money.
Thank
She
you.
spent good money on these videos. The rest of the video is brilliant. It has graphics. It really explains the governance model of the strong mayor model, which is what we have. You know what? You know who would benefit from the strong mayor model, Sam?
Who?
If Councillor Lukes was mayor, she would really benefit from it because that woman, she gets done when she wants to. So I can see her as a strong mayor just getting all of her projects done. And I think we would actually be better off, to be quite honest with you. Because I think that she wouldn't care if she got elected again or not. She would just want to get things done. So the strong mayor model is a problem right now because the people who are selected by Mayor Gillingham have things that they want to do in their own wards, and he's able to use that as leverage. And this is my opinion. You can quote me, but it is my opinion.
Yes, I have so many thoughts. First of all, I had to sort of sit back and say, pretend this is someone else giving this video. Because it's 5 years, lots of things can change in 5 years. I am a grown up. I do live in reality. I know that politicians and public figures change their opinions as their lives and the structures of their jobs change. It seems as though maybe there is some amnesia that these videos were made and are available in terms of the way things are now. Because, Patty, who is the deputy mayor for the city council?
Actually, you know what? I thought it was Councillor Lukes, but it's not. She's the acting deputy mayor.
Okay. And Councillor Lukes is on the executive policy committee, the one that you mentioned.
Yes, because she is the chair. She's the chair of public works, and she's the acting deputy mayor.
Yeah. So, you know, she's in this video and she's talking about how this siloing of information and this sort of creation of cliques is actually not typical in this survey that she's citing. And that, you know, she really seemed, you know, passionate about having a collaborative relationship between councillors that wasn't sort of creating these closed door conversations that exclude certain councillors and can make them feel as though their contributions don't matter, especially when, you know, I find it so interesting that major decisions take 9 votes in order to pass, and there's 7 people on the EPC. So if they've already made up their minds, that's the majority of a vote to get something through. That's maybe a priority for those councillors when there are still 7 other councillors sort of waiting outside in the lobby who aren't privy to information.
Yeah, absolutely. The deputy mayor right now is Councillor Chambers, and
Okay.
Councillor Lukes is the acting deputy mayor.
Okay.
Just so we're all clear.
Yes, so that we understand the hierarchy. Okay, great.
The thing that really strikes me, what really was bothering her as well, is that private meeting to see the report before it becomes public to anyone.
Yeah, and I mean, this information is publicly available. This is not, we have not done any kind of underhanded private investigation a la Aaron Brockovich. This is basic information that is available, and this is the governance structure of the city of Winnipeg. And the last people to hear about the information is the public, which is also kind of a problem. And we're going to discuss that a little bit as we discuss the aftermath of the public works meeting that took place on March 4th.
Right. So I'm not sure who can dismantle the strong mayor model. It is something that would be great to dismantle, because when one person has the power, they will inevitably pick their priorities. So this has worked well for Mayor Gillingham because of the Housing Accelerator Fund that has passed forward, and the zoning is changing in Winnipeg. There is a lot of housing coming up. So these are good things. But when something is not on his agenda, we can show up in droves. We can mobilize so many members of the community, and it doesn't matter. It just does not go forward. So that's really frustrating. And I'm not sure who can dismantle this, if it has to be the province or if it is something from inside City Hall. So if you are listening and you know more than we do, please educate us. Go to our website, ballotbabes.com, and send us a voice memo or just comment below.
So knowing all of that, and maybe your blood pressure has gone up just slightly. Maybe you did already know that. Maybe you were sort of getting a creeping sense that it seems as though you can, like Patty said, you can do all of this organizing and you can write all the letters and you can have these passionate, well-spoken, polite delegates come and speak. It seems though that it doesn't matter. Or it seems as though it's very hard to change the minds of the entrenched bias of those who hold most of the power on council. And you're not wrong. And a lot of things happened, for example, at this past Public Works meeting. And everything that you've learned in the first part of this episode relates to how things unfolded.
Absolutely. So really, essentially, this is the end of part 1. You've learned about the strong mayor model. You've learned why it's important that because of this model, that we have a lot of people on council that are progressive, that are thinking of the good of the whole city, not only their wards, so that it is more difficult to have people in this inner circle that are willing to bow down to to the strong mayor, right? If you want to go, it's been nice. Thank you very much for listening. But I would like, but if you want to stick around, we have some juicy stuff for you to watch. We have some great clips from the Public Works meeting that we'd like to share with you. There's some really good stuff. And Councillor Lukes, you're going to love our little videos today, I can assure you. First of all, we'd like to clear our name, because we don't like being called liars. And I actually went back and, Sam, are you the bike mayor?
I don't know. I mean, we are wearing very similar glasses. We both ride bikes.
We're
and
both
women.
queens.
Yeah, you know, women are very interchangeable, especially loudmouths. So
Yeah,
I can
exactly.
understand that a distinction is difficult to make here.
So I'm going to play a little clip for you guys. And this is Councillor Edie interrupting a delegate to tell her that the bike mayor is lying. So let's see what happens here.
And cutting a budget by $2.5 million, as was done last month, like that's not a great step in the right direction.
I'm gonna give you another-
And I mean, I don't know what happened behind that, but it's, to me, on the outside, it's a cut. And whatever you can do to finagle that is amazing. But yes, I agree, Councillor Edie, it needs to be everywhere. I agree, Councillor Lukes, you've been fighting hard for a long time. We feel like it shouldn't be this hard to save lives.
Just want you to know that the bike mayor is essentially lying in her podcast when she says that Councillor Lukes cut $2.5 million out of the road safety budget, which she's been pushing to get done ever since she got on council. So that's a lie from the public.
And we'll have a public discussion on that $2.5 million. So the reason we're all fighting, right? The reason we're all fighting is because there's one pie. There's one pie, and we all want a piece of the pie. And, you know, when I look at the transportation budget for the province, when I look at how cities are funded, and we are not funded on growth, then we end up all fighting for one piece of the pie. And it's a sad state of affairs, but that's the way it is, so.
And whoever made the decision to choose the road safety budget to fill that hole for
We didn't make that decision. The province of Manitoba made that decision. So we'll fill you in on that, and we'll get the facts straight, and maybe there'll be a little video on it. Who knows?
Oh, there'll be a little video, right?
Ask and you shall receive.
Listen, can we talk about something? She knew Edie was going to bring that up because she goes, come on, tell him. You can see the video of her doing that. It's like, oh, you know, Councillor Lukes, I do love you, but sometimes. So, Councillor Edie accused us of saying that Councillor Lukes cut the budget. So let's see what we actually said. You ready? Because it's really short. So let's see what you actually said.
They all moved to cut $2.5 million from the road safety budget.
Yeah, so I said those things. And
They all moved.
They all did.
And they really did all move to cut the road.
Now, don't worry. I do want to say, so that we are not further indicted and litigated on this point, we will play the Councillor Lukes referred to, you know, we are going to clear this up. We are going to give you the right information. We are going to play that
right now.
This episode.
Yeah,
there it is.
We can play it right now. So at the end of the meeting, Councillor Lukes added an item to the agenda to explain how road safety budgets work and why this was cut. So let's watch. And no, we're not going to edit. It's funny because she starts by saying, oh, I'm sure they're going to edit. So let's see. Let's see what happens.
New business.
That's right.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Nobody's
Good
here.
work.
Make sure you get it.
Oh no, it'll be recorded and clipped and audited and edited and okay. Okay, so this is discussion on the $2.5 million that council voted on. So I just want to put some background behind this, and then maybe Mr. Patman, you could talk about how that impacts out, okay? So on December of 2024, council passed the 2025 budget. So in December of 2025, 13 months, I guess it's 12 months, well, 13 months after we passed the 2025 budget, the city of Winnipeg received notice from the province of Manitoba of the projects that they wanted to fund for 2026. The province directed the city to reallocate funding from the city council's approved 2025 projects. One was $2.5 million from spray pads, the other was $2.5 million from the road safety program, and one was about $500,000 from the Waverly West Fire Station. The province asked the city to relocate to their funding priorities. He told us to do that, which was the Assiniboine Park Conservancy Animal Health Center and the St. Boniface Museum Restoration Project. Note, these projects were not council priorities in 2024, 2025, or 2026. They are the province's priorities that we are now funding with the provincial basket funding. We've been told that the basket funding is for us to do, the city to do with what we want. Not the case. This occurred after we, like a year and a bit after we approved the budget. Now, the relationship between the province and all municipalities basically were sort of created by the province. So we already had our budgets in. We already had the budget baked together, what was happening. We don't have like $5 million sitting around. We, well, 5-6 million, whatever it was taking with the Waverly West Fire Station, they took some money that was residual from the St. Boniface Fire Station. So already the budget was set. It was the year later. So we don't want to vote to take away the spray pads. We don't want to vote to take away road safety program, but we didn't have a choice. So I just wanted that clear.
Okay, so Sam, all of that is facts, okay?
Yep.
The council did pass their 2025 budget at the end of 2024. It took a year for the province to come back. This is very normal. They are always behind. And the city had already submitted their budgets and they were ready to go on everything. And then the province came back and added 2 new projects, as she explained, right? They didn't have that money, but to make the numbers balance, they removed splash pads, road safety, and the Waverly West Fire Station, effectively saying, we're not going to help you fund those, right? So that leaves $5.2 million in the budget as a whole to fill. And if the city wanted to continue to execute in their original priorities. The admin report essentially said, just cut these things out entirely because the city can't afford to borrow $5.2 million, and we can't find anywhere else to get it from. We looked everywhere, and we're all out of ideas, right? Except somehow they did find the money for the Waverly West Fire Station, you know, not the other 2 items. Minimal money, so makes sense. So in short, the city was planning on using the money from the province to fund these things, but the province said to use their money on other things. And the city decided not to try to find the money elsewhere in the budget. So is it the province's fault? Yes, I guess. But ultimately, responsibility for the city budget rests with the city council. They could have taken the funding from something else, but they chose not to. Some might argue that you can't just move money from one line item in the budget to another, but you can. even if the funding source for something is some fund that has restrictions. Those restrictions were put on by council, and council can change their own rules, make exceptions, etc. Right? So, also, the Regional Street Renewal Reserve is where the money is coming from to buy land for Keniston widening. Coincidentally enough, about
I was
5
gonna
million.
say, I was gonna say, I feel like I had read many headlines that had the number 5 million in it very recently for a different road project. And that $5 million, correct me if I'm wrong, is being used to purchase homes in the area that the Keniston expansion will go, effectively expropriating houses to send a freeway through. Is that true?
A freeway that has no budget. It is the freeway that's not $5 million. A freeway that we know very well will be probably close to $1 billion by the time it's said and done. And it's not a done deal. It's not starting. It's not happening yet. But they can find the money, and this money is actually from the 2026 budget, but you can borrow from 1 year to pay for the next. So somehow they could have said, no, you know what? We're not ready for this project. We're going to fund road safety. In any case, this is a really good time to play a little voice memo that came in from one of our listeners. So let's listen.
Hey there, Patty and Sam. I wanted to talk about Janice Luke's clarification of the cuts to road safety and splash pads. She said that they didn't have a choice, even though she's the head of Public Works, an EPC member, and deputy mayor. When the province and feds say they don't have funds for a Keniston expansion, City Council still voted to spend $5 million to acquire properties to expand it. When she pretends there's nothing they can do but cut those road safety and splash pad budgets, insult to our intelligence. If the province had told the city to cut the $5 million from the Keniston project instead, would we be still hearing that there's nothing they could do about it? Or would they find that $5 million somewhere else? Saying that, the province told us to do it, there's nothing we can do, that's deflecting from the truth. They absolutely have the power to decide where money is spent. It's their job. They should do better.
Thank you so much.
See, we didn't make it up. People know this, right? So, yeah, it's a bit insulting that you would think that we wouldn't find out. But we're paying attention, and this is why we're here, to pay attention for you and to pass that information on to you. It really sucks that we have to spend this much time on something like this. We'd like to tell you more about local politics, about getting involved, about how to vote, about how to do delegations, about how to care. But here we are.
I do also want to say that we understand that there are other committees than Public Works. There are other priorities within the city that are not just centered around active transportation infrastructure, around general urban studies design. There are more issues. We've just found that this is just an item that we've been kept busy on for some reason for an extended number of years, and that it's just one example of the way that governance and the people who are behind that governance can stymie what can seem pretty obvious, especially to community and to the folks who may not be traffic engineers and may not be career politicians, but do possess critical thinking skills at the very least to look around and see that there are professionals who are giving professional advice towards one really single issue. And it does really seem simple. And I can see obfuscation occurring. Maybe I'm crazy, but unfortunately, we talk to each other. And I think that has sort of that idea or that knowledge has been lost institutionally on our city council. They just imagine that we are not engaged. And when Councillor Russ Wyatt gave his delegation at the top of the Public Works meeting, he kept using the word the silent majority. The silent majority of the city want this and want that. And he's absolutely right. The perception of the silent majority of the people that don't engage because they don't know how to engage, that is really what governs opinion and policy at times, or seems to be as a pattern of behavior at our city council, that people aren't saying anything and aren't doing anything. And therefore, we, the elected officials, can just make those decisions on their behalf because they're not engaged. But then, when you have a population that is engaged, you are called a radical bike lobby. You are called a small group of loud people. You are put into a very polarizing characterization when at the very basic, you are just caring and you're just trying to tell your elected officials that you care. And I really hope Councillor Wyatt and Councillor Berwadi are okay, because I think they forgot they're in the public service and that the public are allowed to have differing opinions from them.
They want us to show up, they say. This is a democratic process. And when we show up, we're called the radicals. So do they call the truck lobby radicals? Do they call the heavy construction lobby radicals too when they show up to delegate? No, they bow down and say, oh, what else can we do for you? You know? It's so
Yes,
true. You watch them. You watch them respond to their delegations. It is embarrassing, the kind of fawning over that they do for the truck lobby, because in the truck lobby and the Manitoba Heavy, they're getting paid to show up. Are we getting paid to show up? No, we have to take vacation days to show up. We have to be ready on Zoom. For any minute that you have to delegate, which brings us to our next caller. We're going to talk about how delegations work. And we had a call from, let's see.
My name is Chanel, and I was wondering, if I sign up to speak at a City of Winnipeg council or committee meeting, do they publish an agenda with the stated time that I get to speak? It can be difficult to attend during a workday, especially if I don't know when I'm supposed to speak. Thanks.
Do you want to start with that one, Sam?
I would love to. Thank you so much for your question, Chanel, because that seems logical, that a timetable would be put up. However, when all is said and done, when an agenda goes up, it's usually a few days, sometimes a week before the actual meeting with all of the items on it. They're all listed there. And when you go to sign up to speak at a delegation, you go onto the city website, you select the committee that you want to speak to, and then you enter the agenda item. And then you also say if you're in support or in opposition, and this information is collected and collated, and then it's put into the public record, either if you've submitted your comments in writing or if you want to speak. So you sign up to speak, and everyone else is also signing up to speak at the same time. And then when the submission period closes, usually it takes like a couple of hours later for them to then publish the list of the delegates in the updated agenda. And it's first come, first serve. So pretty much whoever was right there when the agenda was publicly available online, who signed up to delegate, you're going to be delegating probably at the top of the list. However, I will say, if, for example, a councillor wants to delegate, they get to bump the line. So usually it's city councillors who have chosen to delegate on an issue in a meeting. They will get precedent over the public. That list is then published. There are no times published with it. Basically, you have to sort of guess how long it's going to stretch out. This meeting on March 4th, it was 10 hours and 45 minutes long. It started at 9:30 in the morning. There are usually delays. Every single delegate gets to spend 5 minutes speaking. However, delegates can often go over time. When you're done your delegation, usually the courtesy is to say, I can take any questions now. Councillors did use this opportunity quite a lot at this Public Works meeting. Usually they don't ask questions. They do, this is a did you know? because then it continues to remain in the confines of the rules that they're asking a question. Usually it's a comment. Oftentimes it is used as a way to sometimes discredit everything that you just said. Sometimes infantilize or condescend to you if you are not a professional person speaking to an issue, or usually sometimes it can feel like entrapment. And it's already quite nerve-wracking to be standing in front of these people who maybe they've been sitting there for hours. Maybe you've watched a lot of meetings and you know that, they're going to be like kind of on the attack, because effectively you're coming and you're saying most of the time, I don't agree with the way that you're doing things. And this is why I think that. And I really, really want you to vote a different way. So they are looking to sort of, protect their bias for the most part. Sometimes they actually do look at it as a learning experience. They will hear a delegation and say, I didn't think of it from that perspective. They will ask questions, qualifying questions to other members of the committee to explain things so that they can have the clearest picture, so that they can have the most informed way to vote on whatever item that you're speaking to. But as far as the time goes, because of all these delays, because they take breaks, for lunch, they take breaks to have a dinner. Sometimes if a delegation is not going very well, and by that I mean, tensions are running high and there's a lot of yelling and a lot of point of order and a lot of turn the mic off and a lot of decorum or people in the gallery shouting, that can also create delays. You don't want to get emotional in these meetings, but it's sort of impossible, especially when it's about protecting people's lives. You're allowed to feel feelings about that. And so these meetings can drag on. So what we usually recommend is if you can't be there for a certain time, you can be in touch with the city clerk. And that's the individual who is employed by the city to manage the meeting and kind of manage the minutes. They're the ones who are kind of announcing what delegate's up next and then who's after that, to organize whoever is in the gallery to come down and prepare themselves. Sometimes delegates will come in and they'll have a presentation ready. They'll have it on a USB stick, or they'll have emailed it prior to the city clerk. Sometimes there's, a little bit of coordinating for that. If you're running late and you can't make it to your delegation, you can contact the city clerk by sending them an email and letting them know you're going to be late. And then they'll move on to the next delegate, and they'll have a note in there that this delegate isn't here right now, so we're moving on to this one, but that delegate's going to speak later. In the day of, there is some of that wiggle room. I also recommend that if you can, you don't have to delegate in person. You can also delegate via Zoom. You can do that from your office, from your home, if you physically cannot be down at the City Hall gallery to actually come and speak. Again, you're making those arrangements with the city clerk. You're making those arrangements when you sign up to delegate. If things change and you have to go to Zoom, you contact the city clerk. They'll help you out. They're very accommodating. They want to make it as easy as possible for you to speak. Have the stream open on your computer. Keep tabs on it. It's available on the City of Winnipeg's YouTube. All of these meetings are live streamed. They are also closed captioned. So you can kind of keep up to date with it, as your day is progressing. And then you can keep a note of who's delegating up next. So it is kind of a lot of work in terms of the logistics. And Chanel, you're absolutely right. It is sucky to have to take a full day off work for these meetings. And the reality is, oftentimes you do. There were some people who were there from 9:30 until like 8 at night, physically at City Hall watching. There was actually quite a large group of us watching online. There were about 65 of us. And we were all talking to one another as we were watching. And it was actually so fun, which I can hear you saying, wow, you're crazy. Like live streaming a public works meeting? That doesn't sound fun at all. But it was sort of like the Olympics. And it's really helpful because as you're watching it, maybe you misinterpreted something. You ask a question in your chat with your community, someone gives you the information, you're learning on the fly, you feel really involved, and you get excited because you're like, oh, I'm actually am amongst people who agree that things need to change. And hope is a renewable resource, and it is something that has to be tended, and it is a discipline, especially in advocacy. So surround yourself with other hopeful people, because some of these meetings are quite heartbreaking, especially if it's like sports match. You really want your team to win. And in advocacy, most of the time they don't win. And I wish, Councillor Wyatt, that this radical bike lobby had as much power as you imagine they do, because we would have been 30 years into a bike utopia, because all of this really started around the Pan Am Games. If anyone listening can remember when those were here in the city, that's when the conversation around active transportation and taking lanes away from cars started. Imagine the world that we would be in now.
Imagine that. Well, another tip, Chanel, is if you're wondering, or anyone listening, who the city clerk is and how to contact them, they contact you. As soon as you sign up and you fill out the form, you just follow the order, submit. You are going to get an email. An email confirmation, just an automatic. And then the second email will be from the city clerk saying, hey, we got your submission, or you will be speaking. Here's the Zoom link. And that's the person that you can communicate with. The other tip is find your friends. If you know that some of your friends or community people are going to be delegating, what we do in our groups is we have one person in charge of texting people when it's like 5 people away from speaking. And if you're wanting to be in person and you say, hey, can you give me like 10 people ahead? Because that gives you about 50 minutes or an hour. You can do that as well. So, having people in your community who are also advocating, who are also speaking, makes it super easy to delegate. So that is that about delegating. And we want to play you guys a few clips, a few delegations actually, just a couple, so that you can see what it looks like. First up, we have Jo Curnow. She is an advocate, and she keeps her delegation super simple because she knew that it was going to be a long day for everyone. And let's just see what she says. Super great.
My name is Jo Curnow, and we know you know who I am. And so over the last year, we've talked to thousands of our neighbors. And the thing that we hear again and again is that people feel really unsafe. While our neighbors have a lot of different opinions about the specificity of the pilots and like additional things that they would like to see, which I'm sure you've heard as well, the thing that we hear is that it is urgently needed. And so I think as the neighborhood group of about 50 folks who've been meeting regularly since the pilot was called for, the thing that I think we want to communicate really clearly is that folks in our neighborhood are very desperate. We feel like this is urgent. And so while people are excited to have permanent infrastructure, we really, really do not want to see any delays. And so if that means putting the temporary pilot in right away, just so there's something in place over the 2 years to do it right, that's what people are asking for.
Thank you, gentlemen and Joe. I used to live at 365 Wellington Crescent, so I'm very, very, very familiar with what goes on. So I hear you. Thank you.
So Dr. Joe, she talked about a lot of engagement because she lives a couple of blocks away from where Rob Jenner was killed. She has been door knocking with friends. She has been getting people to show up. She has been communicating with everybody. She knows what people in that area want. So, and she kept her delegation super short. So, you don't have to do anything too fancy. You don't have to write a long, fancy novel to read out there. You can just speak from the heart.
Yeah, and I also want to say that age is not a limit to delegating. You do not have to be like super experienced. You don't have to be a property owner. If this interests you, you can come forward and speak to it. And I do want to play the next delegation from one of my favorite delegates, Libby, who I believe in the next few decades will probably be mayor of the city, and her delegation and just how she handled that thing that I mentioned when councillors use question period on you.
My name is Libby. I'm 10 years old, and I use she, her pronouns. I was so excited for the pilot bike lane on Wellington Crescent. I thought it was going to go up last summer, but then it didn't happen. Now it sounds like it might not go in this summer either, and it might not even go in the summer after that. If we don't have it soon, more people could get seriously injured or die like Rob Jenner, and we don't want that to happen. That's why we need to put in pedestrian and bike safety measures now.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you. You're becoming very experienced coming down here doing presentations. We appreciate your input. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Eady has a question for you.
Sure. You bring up the point about somebody could get hurt or even die on the road as a result of being hit by a motor vehicle. And you're referring to Wellington Crescent, but you understand that possibility exists all over the city, do you?
Yes, I do. Just what I'm speaking to right now is the Wellington Crescent bike lane, and if I could, I would speak to all of those different places about how there needs to be bike lanes on every residential street. There needs to be a lower speed limit. But right now, I'm talking about Wellington.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that she was able to just bring them back down to earth.
And to
also-
remind him, you want me to talk about all of that? I will talk about all of that. But right now we're talking about Wellington Crescent. Eyes on the prize here, Councillor Eady.
Yeah, come back down to earth. And also she took away his gotcha moment, which is very gratifying. And I'm so proud of her and all the work that her parents do in the community as well. And those are the kind of people we need. And that's who we should be encouraging in these situations.
Speaking of work done in the community, I want to play another caller that called in today talking about exactly that. Because one of the things that Councillor Lukes and everyone talked about was that they didn't get enough feedback back from the community when they did the community engagement. There wasn't enough people. So let's see what our caller has to say about that.
So something that's really bothering me about this most recent public works debacle is Janice Lukes' insistence that the consultation was insufficient because only 17 out of the 71 building owners on Wellington Crescent got back and responded to the feedback outreach. The public works staff mentioned that they tried over and over again to contact these people, that many of them don't even live in Winnipeg or don't even live in Manitoba. And it's like, maybe we just assume that if they didn't get back to you, they don't care. It astounds me. It's like saying, okay, Janice Lukes, well, your most recent election where you won your spot as a city councillor, we're going to overturn that because there were a lot of people who didn't vote at all, and we think that maybe a bunch of them wouldn't have actually voted for you, so we're going to go ahead and, like, that's just not how a process of getting feedback from people works. The act of doing the feedback itself is self-selection for caring enough about the issue to want to make your voice heard. What are we doing here?
What are we doing here?
I
it's
ask myself
funny.
that question every day.
So it's funny she should say that because according to unofficial results from the city of Winnipeg, Scott Gillingham pulled in the support of 27.54% of voters, okay? Making it one of the closest mayoral races. He lost to Glenn Murray, who pulled in 25.29%, a split of only 2.25 percentage points, okay? It is his share of the vote is also the lowest popular vote percentage of any mayor in recent memory, okay? Susan Thompson had the second lowest percentage, and the voter turnout was only 37%. So Scott Gillingham has one of the weakest mandates in modern Winnipeg history, okay? So what does that mean? Does that mean that it didn't count? He had 53,663 votes. So, you know what? We got to do this again because people didn't vote. So we got to try again. Is that how it works?
And in this instance, that was the priority essentially of this motion that Councillor Lukes had put forward. That in her opinion, she felt that they only received input from very few property owners. They had 270 days in order to get this information. That is why they delayed the installation. They wanted to hear from more people. There was a survey that went out. There was a little bit of signage that was put up, paper signage put up in the vicinity of where this infrastructure was going to be built. It's only about like 1.6 kilometer stretch. There was a campaign on social media, on the City of Winnipeg social media sites, on their website. And then they internally were making phone calls. And then they released the results after that window. And I think at some point, she has said, maybe we need better signage. We need a better way to tell people about these projects in order, because this is a major project. This is going to be a major change, and we really want to get that information out. Now, what I found interesting about the meeting is that present were two members of the public service, and they are the ones who built the report, then the design for the temporary lane that everyone saw in the survey if you participated in it. It was open to the public, not only landlords. It was also open to the public to weigh in.
Wait. Are you saying it was open to the people who actually live there rather than the people who own the buildings that are along Wellington Crest?
Of course it was. But it seemed that Councillor Lukes was really focusing on fronting property owners, folks who own buildings in those areas, folks who own condos. There was, some thoughts around delivery trucks, might not have as much access, and emergency vehicles, and parking. Parking is always a big bone of contention, which is a whole other episode. But so these two members of the public service were present at the meeting so that they could answer clarifying questions about this plan. And what was very interesting is that they jumped in and said, if you really want to get the best feedback on a potential permanent design.
What did they say? Let's find out.
What's the most effective way to demonstrate something's occurring? We've provided that opportunity through a pilot interim project is the most effective way to get across the communication of change. And so that's not permanent. It makes people aware. And yes, there is all kinds of advertising, social media. And when we look at what we put together and our staff, there's been a lot of effort put forward on this to make people aware. And obviously it has resonated. Now, the important thing is that with that interim option, you're gaining that education and awareness as councillor through the chair that Councillor Chambers identified. And that's where we're gonna actually feel and understand some of the impacts and the necessary changes. And so if we don't do that and we continue to go with surveys, when we do get to that finish line, and I'll use the example of Grosvenor to Academy. And when you look at Grosvenor to Academy, it's a 30-meter wide right-of-way, and there's a 2-lane roadway there. And that means that there's going to be, like, the reality is if you want modes for all people, you're going to take some of that green space property and make this work for everybody effectively. And so when we go and we say we're not doing any of that, and we're just at the end, we're gonna ask people what their thoughts are. The minute we go in and we have to take 2 trees, say it's only 2 trees, maybe only 1, maybe none. But if we do, what's going to happen? We got a whole new group showing up here being upset because they weren't consulted with and communicated with. So let's learn from what we're doing, engage with the public at the same time, because now people are going to be more vocal because they're seeing it each and every day, and they're either going to take to it or they're going to take against it. The other piece that's important to all this is how we're going to move and people through, and possibly the change of behavior with the citizens in those areas that use that as a daily throughput. And so we need to learn from that. And I know it may not sound like a much of an issue, but every time we make change to a local residential where we put a 30K speed limit in, what's the first thing that occurs? And everybody in each ward knows this. They change their behavior and they bypass that 30 because they don't want to get a fine, and they go in the neighboring streets. That's the first thing everybody does. We got stats to prove it. So this is a much bigger volume. This is a regional roadway we're talking about with major change, as the chair had alluded to. So this pilot gives us all that opportunity to learn and develop a success story, not putting people against each other. And we really got to think like that we're doing this in the best interest of all modes, not just one.
Sorry.
That was Jim Berezowski. He is the Director of Public Works for the Public Service. Nothing he said was untrue.
What? It's like the guy, I don't know if you saw what time it was on the clock on the wall. It was 10 to 7. They had been there all day. He was like, look, you want input. Put these cheap lanes in and you're gonna get input. Like, you could just feel the guy saying, do this thing so you can find out. And it's cheap. It's $400,000, not $5.5 million. Do this one thing for the love of God. You know?
Yes, I'm so glad that you said the amounts, because anyone that I see yabbering in the comment section, wow, how much is it going to cost? How much is the temporary going to cost? It will cost $400,000, and they have the materials in a warehouse already. We won't get super into it. If you want to see an example of a temporary bike lane, go to Westminster and Granite. That's temporary. No one died, like, mentally to have to deal with the way that was rearranged. And thousands of people use that bike network. And that is what a temporary bike lane looks like. It is a curb bolted into the ground with some teleposts and some paint. Like, but Janice Lukes, in her motion, wants to bypass the temporary. And she wants to move right into permanent. She wants to scrap the temporary and go right into permanent. As Joe said in her delegation, we love a permanent bike lane. Love to see it. They are beautiful when they're done. But temporary will save lives now. And like Jim said, if you put it in now, you'll know how to fix it before you go into permanent and start spending a bunch of money on a permanent design.
Chances are the temporary will be fine. Chances are the temporary will suit for years and years, and the city will save all kinds of money. This is a delay tactic, and it ended up with a complete failure of the project altogether. Because what happened in the end of this is
you have four members on this committee. Four. Councillor Lukes, Councillor Eadie, Councillor Chambers, Councillor Sharma. They sat there all day. They listened to 55 delegations. There were over 130 written submissions of people who said, please put the temporary bike lane in. They listened to all of those. They listened to the desperate public service people who had designed the temporary bike lane and prepared the report and had already said to them 6-ish months ago, this is unprecedented that you're not moving forward with the pilot, that you're delaying for feedback when the pilot is a feedback funnel itself. After all of that, council voted. Councillor Lukes voted to scrap the temporary. Councillor Eadie voted to scrap the temporary. Councillor Chambers and Sharma were opposed. Wow. I sat there and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Did the motion die? Did the motion just die? And I did a little cartwheel across my kitchen. And then they took a 10-minute recess. And they came back. And they reintroduced the motion, essentially verbatim, with one addendum. And it was instead brought forward by Councillor Eadie, which makes it a brand new motion. The clerk read it out. They voted again. Councillor Sharma changed her vote to accept it, and the motion passed. Now, what this means is...
So what does that mean now?
Yes, let me tell you what that means. There will be no temporary bike lane. That's gone. All of that money spent on consultation, all of that money spent on designing it, all of that time and energy, thousands of hours of advocacy work, of delegates coming forward, of the excavation of trauma and grief by Rob Jenner's widow, Wendy Van Loon. He was the cyclist who was killed on this stretch that has called for this infrastructure for nothing. Now, this doesn't mean that the bike lane itself is dead, but the temporary measure that could literally be put in as soon as the snow melts, gone. Now, what we can expect is that this motion will move on to the Executive Policy Committee, which we discussed at the top of this episode. Councillor Lukes will present it to them. They will vote on if it should move to City Council, and if they get the requisite 9 votes from City Council, then a plan for a permanent bike lane will move ahead. That's a lot of ifs. That's a lot of maybes. That's a lot of lottery.
And an election in between.
Exactly. And, you know, the conversation is, where are we going to get the money? It's always, there's a pie. Everyone wants a piece of the pie. You have 2 councillors who are coming to this meeting and are ranting and raving about how bike infrastructure is not a priority and we can't fold to the radical bike people. So we really have to, I'm never going to vote for anything like this. That's a sentiment that you're already up against. So who knows if this bike lane will even happen. If it goes to EPC and those mayor inner circle councillors don't think it's a priority, the bike lane will not happen. There will be no bike lane on this stretch where Rob Jenner died. There will be nothing. It will be something that maybe you can hope to reintroduce to maybe a different city council. But it's a loss. It's a loss. And when I said that hope is something that is a discipline and needs to be tended, that's what I mean. It was really crushing. I don't know what happened in that 10-minute recess. Very disappointing. Councillor Sharma is for the Old Kildonan ward, and if you live there, maybe you could ask her what her thought process was. It was very heartbreaking. But the fight is not over, though. No. I want to take us back and say there's more work to be done.
Right. I think the first thing that you can do, if this interests you at all, or if you want to just practice playing politics, is you call Councillor Chambers. You can find his number on the City of Winnipeg website and thank him for his vote. Tell him how much you appreciate everything that, you know, the fact that he voted to keep that temporary bike lane. Then you call Councillor Sharma and you tell her how disappointed you are that she voted. You call Councillor Luke. She loves getting phone calls. Tell her the same. And then you can tell her that the ballot babes sent you. And then you can call Councillor Eadie and tell him that the bike mayor sent you. One of the bike mayors, who knows? Whichever one.
I'm the deputy bike mayor now.
There you go. Oh my God. Acting and deputy bike mayor. And also pay attention to the agendas. We will keep you abreast, but we will let you know when it's time to register for EPC. or you can just watch the agenda yourself. You can register to speak at EPC, or you can just show up in person, be that person in the room for them to feel that pressure, yeah, they call us the radical bike lobby. Maybe you don't even ride a bike. There's people who speak there who don't even ride bikes, but they love to just lump us all together. And that's fine, because that is the democratic process. We show up and we tell them how we feel. So those are the next few steps. And we hope that you will get engaged. We will be talking more about the 30 and 40 speed pilots. We don't want to make this episode too long. We have some more clips that we'd like to share with you. But for today, this is what we wanted to talk to you about. We wanted to update you on. It's kind of sad, but you know what? We're learning a lot in this process, and I'm fairly confident that we will prevail yet. We're going to get enough of you listening to the podcast, also engaging in your community, voting, and we're going to clean up house at City Hall. Am I right?
Yeah, you sure are. I just want to give some 2 dates. So the EPC meeting is on March 17th, the Executive Policy Committee meeting, March 17th. You can sign up to delegate for that in person or over Zoom, or you can submit comments in writing. The meeting after that will be the City Council meeting on March 26th. The outcome of the EPC meeting will determine, again, if this motion is on the agenda for the City Council meeting on March 26th. As far as delegating at full City Council, the issue there is that there are a lot of items and they want to limit delegation. So they only allow 2 delegations in support of an item and 2 delegations against. So coordinate with your community. Again, at that meeting, it's best to have bodies in the seats, or if there's a call to rally or anything like that, that's where you're needed most. Spread the word. Tell people about what's happening and get involved in that way. That's less of a delegation appointment.
Great. So that's it for today. Remember, babes, that City Council works for you.
And this October, tell your babe to vote.